began in the late 1950s. Idea of the great Soichiro Honda, creator of the Honda bike and car company. You see, Honda sought a modernized testing ground for the automobile. Just a short decade and a half out from the end of World War II, the fledgling Japanese automobile industry needed to legitimize itself, and a world-class racing facility to test and hold competition seemed just the ticket. So, Mr. Honda found himself some land near a lake, old farming country, mainly rice paddies, to create his dream. Just outside the eastern coastal Japanese town for which it was named, Suzuka. When initial designs penned by Honda himself around the circumference of the lake proved less than inspiring, a letter was sent to the great Dutch circuit designer John Hugenholz, famous for the flowing and popular newly created home of the Dutch Grand Prix, Zandvoort. With assurance from Honda that even the mountains could be moved if it made a better circuit, Hugenholz was able to create the track of his dreams. The track he crafted was a delightfully twisting and undulating road through and around the countryside. Coming in at a tick over 6 kilometers or 3.7 miles, the 17-turn Suzuka was open and ready for racing, just in time for 1962. And it seemed like not a single of those 17 curves were wasted. From the wonderful flowing and uphill S's at the start of the lap, with their differing radius to test both drivers and the handling of their automobiles, to the fast back straight ending in the infamous 130R to put both mechanics and daring do to the test. It's nothing short of joyous to drive laps around Suzuka. And it was an engineering marvel. By far, the most unique aspect to Suzuka is its crossover. There were as many as 5 planned at various stages of development, but ultimately Hugenholz scaled back and settled on a single, circuit-defining crossover bridge, creating that unique figure-of-8 layout Suzuka is known for. The balance this created cannot go unnoticed. For a track designed to test the automobile, a crossover afforded the advantage that the circuit neither went predominantly left nor right. In its 17 corners, it was nearly a 50% split of direction. When driving the course, it's almost easy to miss the crossover loop, but it really is that secret which makes Suzuka so remarkable. So when racing started, first with motorbikes, then with cars, Suzuka immediately stood out, not only as a fantastic test circuit for Honda, but also as that much-desired, world-class facility to elevate and excite Japan. It wasn't long until the first endurance races were held, and by the late 1960s, the track hosted a full suite of races, from some minor formulas to the much-loved motorcycle endurance events, 300, 500, and 1,000-kilometer sports car races, and the jewel of them all, a 12-hour endurance race for all types of automobiles, domestic and imports, to duke it out. And it's these great early years that we can relive in Assetto Corsa thanks once again to Sergio Loro and F3 classic tracks. It was a time before guardrails and chicanes, a raw, wonderful flowing design as penned by John Hugenholz. What stood out to me immediately was how well Sergio captures the sculpted through the hills nature that this track really was. When Mr. Honda said they'd move mountains to create a better course, he wasn't kidding. With spectators laid out amongst the peaks trying to gain a bit of a view, you really feel the excitement of motorsports, which was so needed at this time in Japan. All of the period-correct sponsor boards in Japanese language, the Yamada Lake itself, and the unique castle-like structure overlooking it, never mind the spectacularly detailed paddock. There is a wonderful sense of time and place in this track, and a great reason to dust off some of those Japanese classics. So coming around for the final 6 laps of the 500-kilometer race, let's jump aboard the spectacular Honda S800 and enjoy carving our way through traffic as we race into the sunset. Buzzing across the start-finish line at Suzuka, heading down towards the first corner, back in 27th, 6 laps to go. So we'll race into the sunset here. Got an Isuzu coming up behind me, but brake nice and late, down into the first corner. Such a challenging one, closing radius. Get it down to 3rd gear and try to open it up to take that late apex. I miss it just a little bit there, but then hard on the throttle. So we'll catch up to the back of this other S800 and head into the S's. A great rhythm section on the course. Hugenholz really wanted to design a track that was for both testing machines and drivers, and I think this section of the course exemplifies that. So go to the left and to the right again, come over across around the top of the hill near the lake. You can see all the spectators out and the big castle on the hill. So we'll sweep into the long left-hand corner that heads us towards the Degnars. We'll come up to the top of the hill. This is one of the corners that's quite a bit different back in the 60s on this version of the course. Get it down to third gear for a long right-hander. The Degnar is just a single sweeping corner that then points us towards the crossover and head underneath the bridge and then up to the hairpin. That corner changed in the subsequent years, right before Formula One came here in the 80s, to that double left-hander we know it as today. But come up to the hairpin, squeeze right to the outside of the track, this Toyota in front, trying to find some way around. Running a bunch of period Japanese cars. These are all cars that raced in Japan around this time, maybe not all together at the same time, but really help make it feel the part. So we'll come through the long sweeper here. This Toyota to my left should be quite a lot faster in a straight line than the Honda is here. But then at the top of the hill, come to the formidable spoon corner. This one also quite a lot different than it is these days. Maybe not at first glance, but it's a little bit tighter here. I think it was straightened out and moved a bit for runoff in subsequent years. But we'll come around left-hander here, and this is where I could really start to notice the hill cutting as we get it onto the back straightaway, right up to the edge of the circuit. They very much moved the earth to create this track, as Mr. Honda said they would, and you can notice it so much on this version of the track, I think because there's just not a lot of other trees and things in the way. They had just finished landscaping it back in these days. But now, headed towards 130R, the infamous corner. I'll give it a little bit of space on this opening lap, or this opening lap of what you're seeing, but then come through 130R there and into the final corner. Fifth gear already flat out, and it's a flat-out right-hander that heads us back onto the front stretch. Come around and get greeted by the massive grandstands full of spectators. I believe for the first Formula One race here and a lot of the older races, they actually used to do raffles for tickets in the lottery system to get to decide who would actually come see a race at Suzuka. It was that popular. We'll come down to the first corner, though. That Toyota behind gaining on me. We'll try to give it a bit of extra speed around the outside. This little S800 is such a great car. It's a very old Assetto Corsa mod, I think from 2016 by A3DR. And I've got it painted up with all these awesome skins from Pasta, and he actually did almost all of the cars that you're seeing in this video. Pasta has hundreds of skins, especially dealing with Asian motorsport and history and things. And like I said, all of these cars aren't ones, it's a lot of oversteer there. They're not ones that race specifically at Suzuka, but Fuji as well, and some of the other races in the period in the late 60s. And very much could have seen a race at Suzuka that looked a lot like this. This will sweep underneath the Dunlop Bridge there. I think that is Dunlop Corner, and up to the Degnar again. The singular Degnar. Get it down to third gear. Really rev the car to get it to slow down. This car is a bit tricky to drive. You'll see it dance a lot through the corners. It's got a very short wheelbase and only 70 horsepower out of its little four-cylinder engine, but it revs so high. The Japanese were so good at that, taking everything they learned from motorcycles and putting it into awesome cars. So we'll get up the inside, into the hairpin, sneak up the inside of this Isuzu as well. You can see a little Mini Cooper in front. The Japanese did import a lot of different cars, and I almost took out a Porsche 906 for this, because for some of these sports car races, they did race some Porsches that they pulled over from Europe. Thought it might be better to go with something from Honda itself, but that car is awesome to drive around here, and it's really interesting looking at pictures from this time and just seeing the eclectic mix of cars that raced in Japan. Very much their own vehicles. I think a lot of folks that love Japanese car culture and things very much focus on even 2 decades, 3 decades after this. So we'll flick on the lights here down the backstretch. But the 60s had a lot of charm to them as the auto industry tried to find its footing in Japan, and I think it has quite a lot to offer. off in the dirt in front. Let's see if he keeps it out there. Ooh, bad rejoin. I think almost taking out that Mini in front, sweep into the dirt a little bit. All right, I think passing quite a few cars that lap. We'll see how far up I can get with just 4 laps to go up to P18. 5th gear flat out. This car, in later years, I was reading, revved over 10,000 RPM once they really got the engines working and the latest models of it. But they stopped producing this car after quite a while, and I think the next sports coupe like this that Honda made was the S2000 that everybody these days is familiar with. And you can see its legacy in this car. Absolutely. We'll do switch sides with the Isuzu in front. Run a bit deep there. It's all right. He'll keep it in. The thing I love most about lapping at Suzuka is how you're always doing something. It's very much a track that's built to be driven, and I think even driving it alone in any car is a lot of fun, and that's a great mark of a great circuit, is when you can drive it alone and have a good time just lapping a car around it. You know it's a good one, and Suzuka very much is that. The Degnar curve here, I love this version of it. I think it was equally as interesting, or it's equally interesting these days, being the double right-hander. But the nice flowing one like that is quite neat. I think it was named after a motorcycle rider who had an incident there shortly after the track was opened. I don't know how I'd feel about having a corner I crashed in named after me. I saw so many of the cars in this set, and the ones that are painted from pasta are this light yellow color, and looking back at photos and things, it seemed to be a very popular color for cars in this time in Japan. And it's a color you don't really see much these days. Almost an eggshell, or even a little bit darker than that. I think it's quite pretty. And a very nice color for this car. So come around spoon then, 3rd gear. You just want a good exit here, just like you do these days, even though it's a bit tighter. The apex is so late on it. All right, up the inside, we got a better run than the car to my right. You can see the spectators up on the side of the mountain, just with that little fence in front of them. And it very much was like that, especially when the circuit first opened. People just kind of got everywhere that they could to see cars, especially up on the hills. Near where the rice paddies used to be is the 34 here on the outside, hangs it in. Slide it into 130R. Little sideways there, catch the oversteer. Still side by side. Not often you can go through that corner side by side and live to tell the tale. So come through the final corner and come across the line. A couple cars in the pit lane. I think the Daihatsu prototypes. It's interesting. Pick up a few freebies then as we'll come down to turn number 1. I have to outbrake the car to my right, just past the 50 marker. Get it down to 4th gear. I want to go for the late apex here. Just cut him off in front. I was lucky I cleared the car. Just saw my rear view in time. The sunset here is so nice. I don't know if they actually raced into the sunset like this, but I thought it might be nice for a video just to kind of capture the track in this late evening type vibe. It feels very magical, especially with that castle up on the hill. But I think the fact that you don't get to race on Japanese circuits that much if you're doing 60s and 70s vintage type racing and sims. Race around Fuji and Suzuka. There's not a lot else out there, so it's so awesome to have Suzuka like this in a sim and learn a bit more about this period, because I'll be the first to admit this is not something that I'm super knowledgeable about, this era of Japanese motorsports, but it seems like it was a very, very exciting time. Maybe something for the Japanese public to focus on so close to the war. Making slight contact with the 53 there as he'll snake in front. I love the traffic, or the public road style lights on the sides of the track, so lock it up into the hairpin. Easily get the spot on the Isuzu. Up behind this lovely coral colored S800. Come along the right side. It's going to be a tricky one on the outside here. 4th gear. Get down to 3rd and try to carry some speed through. There we go, get my foot in it. slide it sideways through spoon. There we are. Back onto the back straightaway. Let's see if I can pull away from him here. I can really tell how Zandvoort and this track were sister tracks, designed by the same person. Even though they're miles apart in their actual design, they feel like they have a lot of the same qualities, especially with the amount of hills and the way the circuit flows through them as we come to 130R again. 17's gonna make it tight, but leaves the space on the outside. We have one of the prototypes coming up behind me. Imagine they're gonna be quite a lot faster. Whoa, another car off the edge of the circuit. It's one of the Toyotas. We'll be able to sneak by him as well. But Zandvoort is one of my favorite tracks, the classic version specifically, and love Sergio Lora's version of that, so it feels fitting that he would also do this Suzuka version and give us something to race on. It was many years until Formula One raced here, not until the 1980s, but there's so much awesome auto racing that occurred around this track in the 60s and 70s that it's great to have a track to experience all that on. Straighten out the corner here. We're passing quite a few cars. I do have the AI maxed out, and this is nothing really to do with the track. The AI in Assetto Corsa are just not always the quickest, but they do make for a lot of fun trying to snake your way to the front as the sky turns this wonderful shade of purple. Absolutely gorgeous with pure weather and everything. Let's come up to the Degnar. Third gear, try not to over rev it, slide it into the corner, pick up the throttle, just a little bit loose there. See if I can switch sides with this S800. So come up to the hairpin, hang it out wide, just be a little later on the brakes, a little more daring. Oh, I'm totally gonna blow the corner that time, lock up the left front. We'll try to carry the speed through on the outside. There we go, dive bomb, maybe even a slide job. Grab the position from him, get it up to fourth gear. This car definitely has not much power, 70 horsepower, you can feel it, but it is a really fun car to drive, lots of momentum, and it behaves quite nice. I always have a lot of trouble driving Mini Coopers, which are very much of the same class of vehicle as this. This one's much better behaved, a little more my driving style. Over the crossover into 130R. I want to keep it flat, but I don't know if it'll stick as we have the prototype right in my rear view. This track is very well lit at dusk like this. He's going to come up the inside. That prototype Daihatsu, I don't know much about it at all. It's the Daihatsu P5, developed by Historic Sim Studios. I don't think I've featured a car from them before. They've got a couple cars that I think fit this whole era as well. I believe in a Zuzu type prototype as well. But a really cool little car, and very much one that would have raced at this track when it first was released. We'll come down to the first corner. So on the final lap here, and just enjoy this sunset view of Suzuka, 1960s style. A beautiful track in a beautiful setting. Around the outside here, we're past a radio tower. There's so many unique looking objects and things next to this track. Can't imagine how long it took Sergio to model all of the additional elements. These aren't things that you could really steal from other circuits. Everything had to be done individually, and I think it creates an excellent theme. It really feels like Suzuka, just much more barren, like it was just developed, just cut out of the earth. Not a lot of trees and things like that. It's very, very cool. This was a farming area, like I had said, and a lot of folks thought a circuit could not happen here. Rice paddy farms, I can imagine, are very much like swamps. And so Honda really did quite a lot to make this happen, this track, and I think we're all grateful for that. As we'll come up to the hairpin here, get up the inside, the final lap, trying to make up a couple more positions. I don't know where I'm going to finish, but to be honest, it doesn't really matter to me. It's just a lot of fun around this track. Fifth gear around the outside of Spoon one last time, down to fourth gear. Pick up the throttle again for the middle bit of it. Second part of this corner is much more pronounced than it is on the modern version, but I have to take the outside line, the rain line. But there we go. Side by side with another S800, down the back straightaway. Almost full nighttime now. So we'll head up to 130R. I don't know if we're going to be side by side for this. It'd be awful hard to go flat out like that. Drag racing, he's pulling ahead just a little bit. Lift off the accelerator. Got to understeer mid-corner, but hang it in right up to the white line on the outside. Give me the inside line through the final corner. And juggle the wheel on through. See the finish line now. Car behind, slides in behind, getting that final position. We'll see where I finish. P3. I was so close to the front of the grid, I didn't even know that I was that far up. But so much fun. I love this version of this circuit and everything Sergio Lauro comes out with. I wish I had enough time to cover all of it in extreme depth. But keep your eyes on F3 Classic tracks, because I think he always comes out with very unique and interesting circuits, whether it be something that everybody's heard of like Suzuka, but an older look at it, or some more obscure tracks. He's got a bunch of these American road courses from the 50s and 60s that he's done, and I took a look at Greenwood specifically, but I recommend any of them. Sergio's been around for forever, and always happy to look at something he did. So I hope you enjoyed it. Suzuka from the 1960s, a magical, magical place, and such a great circuit in both design and in purpose. So thank you for watching. This is GP Laps, and I'll see you all again next time.